The iPhone X was released about 5 years ago, and it was Apple's next big thing, following the launch of the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, but with a completely new design. With a 5.8-inch display and a resolution of 458 pixels per inch, which is more than on the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, the iPhone X brought some improvements, but it heavily drew on the specs from its predecessor, thus bringing the same 6-core A11 Bionic chip as well as a 3-core GPU. Aside from that, it came in two options regarding the storage and RAM, a 64 3GB version and a 256 3GB version. The camera system was almost an exact copy from the iPhone 8 Plus, with a vertical positioning instead of a horizontal one as the only difference. So the question is, should you buy an iPhone X in 2022? And at what cost? But before we move on with the specs, I have to explain a few things. I released a video buying a 2015 MacBook Pro in 2022, and a lot of people were in the same position as I was. That is, looking for an older device that is serviceable in 2022. The true goal here is to purchase a good enough device which will carry you through the next couple of years whilst working on a tight budget. Thus, the way to achieve this is to go for an X flagship and try to get the most value per dollar. However, one thing you have to keep in mind is there are a lot of downsides and compromises to make. How many, you ask? Well, let's see. So the same goal is for buying a phone. I want a well-performing and a smooth phone which will allow me to use all of the social media apps without any hiccups. As I've started my graphic design agency, I find myself using social media quite a bit more, and now that I have to create a lot of content, including Reels on Instagram, for example, it seems that my old phone is simply not enough. By the way, my current phone is a low to mid-range Samsung that cost around $200 2 years ago. Scrolling through socials, uploading photos and videos have become increasingly laggy, whilst trying to make a reel within the Instagram app has become impossible. Lags, crashes, and just a rough experience have become constant. So I've decided to look into an upgrade which would make this whole process a lot smoother. Which is where we get to the iPhone, but not really any iPhone. The iPhone X, considering that my budget is not big enough for the latest generations of Apple's flagships. And if you're asking why Apple in general, well, I bought their MacBook Pro, and honestly, I just love how smooth it is. It has a gorgeous display as well as a sturdy design, so I went in looking for an iPhone expecting the same kind of qualities. But did I find them? Well, you have to continue watching the video to find out. Now, aside from the most obvious change, the notch, the iPhone X ditched the home button as well as the fingerprint sensor, which gave way to Apple's Face ID. Which brings me to lesson number 1 of buying an iPhone X, broken Face IDs. Out of almost 200 listings in a local version of an eBay online store, around 40% of listings sell iPhones with broken Face ID sensors. Personally, I think it's an important feature to have on an iPhone for both security and ease of use reasons. Thus, I don't really see how you could justify purchasing an iPhone X without a properly functioning Face ID sensor. I will say, however, that there are listings with fully functioning devices, but the prices tend to go up to even $300 for a 5-year-old used iPhone. Here it is important to mention the battery as well. Most listings have iPhones with around 80% battery health or lower, which is something that I would personally stay away from. Typically, when buying a used iPhone, you should aim at around 90% and higher battery health. There are always iPhones with replaced batteries of 100% capacity, but not so fast. Although it is a new battery, I'm highly wary about this, and here's why. I'm not sure what the situation is in the US, for example, when it comes to the battery replacement, but in my country, the original Apple batteries are replaced with cheap knockoffs, which can't hold nearly as long as the original battery, and oftentimes they can cause severe issues like bloating, which then leads to other issues like backlight bleed. Nevertheless, let's say that the replacement battery is respectable, and that the service was also professional, and the screen is not protruding on one of the edges. I still believe that paying $300 for an iPhone X is a little too much. And that is why I started to look into an iPhone XS, which, although at a higher price, I thought it was a bit more fair considering that it was released a year after the original iPhone X, and it has a better processor, the A12 Bionic. It also has an extra gigabyte of RAM and a storage option of 512 gigs. The camera system, to my knowledge, remained pretty much the the same, but due to a more powerful processor, the images produced by the iPhone XS can be a bit better. But awkwardly enough, the XS has a smaller battery than the 10, and yet the 10 had a small battery to begin with. I think that batteries less than 3000 mAh are hardly enough for a full day's use, at least for someone like me who spends quite a lot of time on my phone, switching between social media apps, some light image editing, as well as a lot of YouTube, especially before bed. And yeah, I know it's bad for me. Probably. Now, something that not many might find useful or important is the always-on display. Currently on my phone, I don't have it, and I can give you so many examples of when it would have been useful to have it. I find myself fiddling with my phone more than I should, especially when I'm working, because I'm waiting for a specific notification to arrive, and then I take my phone, unlock it, and instead of checking that single notification, I somehow end up on Instagram and I just scroll my life away. So I believe that having an always-on display would be great, since you could see all of your notifications as well as the date and time without it being too distracting. Now, as we all know, the iPhones don't really have this feature. That is, they didn't until these newest iPhones came out a few weeks ago. And even now, Apple hasn't really nailed the way that always-on displays work, at least the way that some Android phones have. Alright, when I weigh all of the pros and cons, and when I add everything together, I just simply don't believe that it is smart to go for an iPhone 10 or even an iPhone XS in 2022. Listen, I know that we all love the Apple experience, especially the intuitiveness of iOS and its buttery smooth performance, but at the end of the day, these iPhones don't support high refresh rate displays. They are set at the traditional 60 Hz, whilst you have some affordable and new Androids that go up to at least 90 Hz at around the same price as these used iPhones. Example being the Xiaomi X3 Pro or the Poco F3, which have caught my eye, and as many big names on YouTube have covered these phones and ultimately label them as flagship killers, I want to tell you that my iPhone hunt has come to an end, and I've started to look into the Android market again. So if you're interested in how this story develops, I recommend that you give this video a like and subscribe to my channel, as I will be making a video in the near future regarding the market of affordable yet killer Android phones, and hopefully I will be settling for one of them. Until next time, bye.